the other end of the midfield experience scale, you just talked about a new creative option, and Arsenal do have one, a 15-year-old one in Max Dowman. Of course,
Hmm.
he can't make his debut this season, but there was Arsenal recently lost in the FA Youth Cup to Man United, but he had that, yeah, he did really well at the Emirates, had that fantastic solo run, won a penalty in the end. So you talked about there being the need for a new sort of Odegaard backup. Like I say, Dowman won't be playing this season, but next season, if he keeps going the way he is, do you think he is nailed on to do an Ethan Nwaneri and make his debut at 15?
Oh, potentially, yeah. It's hard to talk about players that young, though, isn't it? It's just, I mean, he is a special talent. There's no denying it. Arsenal have been trying to not keep him under wraps, but they know that the spotlight's going to be there, the attention's going to be there. But sometimes when you're that good at that age, it's impossible to sort of keep them covered up, really. And he is a hell of a talent, but you've got to be careful with them. When Aries now what? He's still 17, but he's getting close to 18, and he's now in the first team picture regularly. Dowman's still 3 years behind that. So if he were to play next season, I would not expect him to be playing, getting the sort of minutes that we're seeing Miles or Ethan get now. It would be very much sort of dip your toe into the water, get the odd minute here or there. So I don't think you can rely on Max Dowman next season. I think that's put an incredible amount of pressure on such a young kid who's still developing and whose body's still getting used to the demands of, under 23s football, let alone senior Premier League football. So you've got to be a bit careful with him. You also don't know what's going to happen with him. He hasn't signed a professional contract yet. He can't. He's too young. And until that happens, then you're always wide open to the prospect of a Chido Obi Martin situation developing and him being offered huge amounts of money elsewhere that he and his he and his representatives or whatever decide that's what they're going to do. Arsenal fallen victim to that with Aiden Heaven, Chido Obi Martin. So hopefully, fingers crossed from an Arsenal point of view, it doesn't happen, but it could. It looked for a long time like Ethan Nwaneri was going to go before he signed his first professional contract. Arsenal thought he had gone and that he'd decided to go, but then they managed to change his mind and convince him to stay, which is fantastic news. But they're going to be in that same situation with Max Dowman. So until he puts pen to paper on that first professional contract when he's 17, you just don't know what's going to happen with him. So yeah, brilliant talent, really, really exciting. They do need to make sure there is a pathway there, which they have done with Ethan as well. It was a big part of Emil Smith Rowe going was to allow Ethan to basically get the minutes that maybe Emil Smith Rowe would have gone had he stayed. So they do need to take that into account with Max Dowman. But yeah, tread carefully and let's see how it goes. Let's see how he develops over the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, that actually brings me on to my next question there. So you talked about Chido Obi and Aiden Heaven going to Man United. I mean, they've got their potentially financial reasons for leaving, but also the pathway might find it easier to get into the first team at Man United, and they've obviously had that experience there. But you
I
look
think
at
Cheetah would probably be starting now if he was still at Arsenal. So I don't know about that. I think the pathway at Arsenal was very clear for a young striker. I'm still surprised he's made that move. Well, I'm not because I know he's benefited a lot financially from it.
So, yeah, we'll get onto that when we talk about Man United in a bit. But you look at Max Dowman, and there are similarities with Martin Odegaard. He was 15 when he burst onto the scene, and arguably there's no better mentor to learn from for Dowman than Martin Odegaard. So, would that be an incentive for him to stay and not follow the Chidobe or Aiden Heaven path?
You would hope so. You would hope so. But I think it's more just the pathway is going to be really, really important. Look, Dowman's going to have he's going to have so many options on the table for him because of his sheer natural talent. So it's going to be about, yeah, getting some sensible people around him. Arteta will be very much mapping out his plans for him to him and his representatives, players like Odegaard as well. But also if you're Max Dowman, you don't really like. I had a question someone was asking me about this earlier this week, saying, "Well, do you think they'll be looking at Cheeto? Max will be looking at Cheeto and Aiden and thinking, oh well, look what's going on with them." I thought, well, why does he need to do that? He only has to look into the first team right now at Arsenal and look at Ethan Nwaneri and Mars Lewis Skelly to see that you don't have to go elsewhere to get these minutes. You've got two players right there in front of you who are doing it. I mean, Mars Lewis Skelly's probably going to get his first England call up in a couple of weeks. He's 18. He's trying the exact same path that Max Dowman hopefully is gonna follow very, very soon. So I don't think he needs to look at these other players at other clubs. He just has to look closer to home and see what Ethan's doing, what Mars Lewis Skelly's doing, and thinking, why would I need to go? I'm at a top club. I'm at a club where I know I'm very, very comfortable. My development's been good. My development's been fast. I'm already virtually, behind the scenes part of the first team squad because he's always training with them. He's always there. They've welcomed him in already. Yes, he can't play yet because of the regulations, but almost everything else, he's a first team regular, behind the scenes at the moment. So, they are absolutely doing all they can to show him that the pathway's there. We know how good you are. We want you involved. We're getting you involved. And then here, just look at this example with these two young players just ahead of you and the minutes that they're getting. So hopefully that will be enough to convince him that he doesn't need to go anywhere else and that Arsenal is the place to be.